This video is brought to you by Mint Mobile. So this is Google's Pixel 7 Pro, and it's been out for about a year now, and I want to do a review of the Pixel 7 Pro to see if it's still worth today buying in late 2023 going into 2024. So first, the pricing. It starts at a retail price of $900, but you can easily either find it on sale through Black Friday deals or potentially buying it refurbished or reused or renewed. And you can get it for around $450 to $500 or so used. So for that pricing, let's talk about what you get. First, talk about the hardware and design. It is overall a glossy looking phone. It is a good looking phone. It looks premium, but it's just super glossy. So if you're not a fan of a glossy looking phone, you're not gonna really like this device. The back glass is glossy, the aluminum frame is glossy, and the back glass that it uses is Corning Gorilla Glass Victus as well as Victus on the front. It's got curved edges, rounded corners, so in the hand it is pretty comfortable. It also has a decent weight. It's not heavy, it's also not super light, so it doesn't feel cheap. So I think it's got pretty decent weight. It's probably the lightest phone compared to most of the competition out there, but it's still overall pretty comfortable. But even though it's comfortable, it is somewhat slippery. Just the glossy finish, the glossy glass, and the glossy frame, it does make the phone feel a bit slippery, so I definitely recommend a case. And my favorite case has been the dbrand grip case. It's one of the most comfortable cases and grippiest cases out there. So not only is the case grippy and protective, but you also can add these skins that allow you to kind of customize it a little bit when it comes to your case choice. And the 7 Pro does have that camera visor. It's been a notable, I guess, design since the Pixel 6 Pro and carried on to currently the Pixel 8 Pro. So with the Pixel 7 Pro, you still have that camera visor, and the camera visor on the Pixel 7 Pro specifically is blended seamlessly into the aluminum frame. So it's like a one-piece frame. It is pretty nice looking, and in this particular colorway, it is the hazel, which is a green, grayish looking colorway. The aluminum frame looks either silver or gold depending on the lighting and angle that you look at it, and then the black glass is like a greenish, grayish color, again depending on the lighting environment that you're in. The aluminum frame does scratch up pretty easily, so if you're putting this device on a flat surface, especially on a rough surface, and you accidentally push it around, it is going to scratch up. Like my camera visor does have a bunch of small minor scratches, so I definitely, again, would recommend the case to protect the visor from scratching up. The positive though, that the visor stretches across the whole back of the device. When you put your phone down on a flat surface, it's not going to rock at all. So it is probably the only device out there that doesn't rock at all when you have it on a flat surface. And over the past year, I have been using it on and off, so it hasn't been in my pocket 24/7 every single day. But I do have a couple of minor scratches on the glass itself. Very small minor ones, nothing big or major, and no chips or damage done to the actual aluminum frame itself. So it's been overall holding up pretty well as far as durability. And the whole phone itself is IP68 water and dust resistant rated, so you'll be fine if you drop it in water, splash it in water, drop it in sand, all those environments that you're in, you're probably going to be just fine with the Pixel 7 Pro. Next, looking at the buttons and the ports, the power button and the volume rocker are on the right-hand side of the device, so if you're right-handed, it is pretty easy and ergonomically comfortable to reach those buttons. They have them lowered down compared to the Pixel 6 Pro, so it is pretty comfortable to reach. The only thing I will complain about is just because the Pixel likes to put the power button over top of the volume rocker, sometimes I click the volume rocker thinking it's the power button, but honestly, over time, you probably get used to it. I still sometimes confuse them, but it's no big deal. At the bottom, you do have USB-C as well as dual firing speakers. Now, it is important to note that only one speaker does all the power. The other one, if you block it, it won't distort any of the volume. And speaking of those speakers, they're not the best out there. I definitely think compared to all the devices I've used over the past year, they're definitely on the weaker side. They don't sound super loud, and they also don't have a complete fullness to it. It lacks a good amount of bass and low end, I want to say, but still, it gets the job done for your basic stuff. But I will say that you probably will find yourself keeping the volume to around 50 to 75% most of the time, just because it's not that loud. You also have a physical SIM card slot, so you can insert a SIM card easily from any carrier. You also have the ability to use eSIM, which is what I'm currently using right now. And my carrier experience has been pretty good overall. I've actually been using Mint Mobile, who I'm actually partnering with for today's video. So if you ever thought to yourself, why the f is my wireless bill so damn high? Well, let me tell you about Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice speed, coverage, or data because they're built on the largest 5G network. And they're able to keep costs so low because they don't actually have any physical retail stores, so they cut the retail locations and they cut the physical salespeople. They sell directly to you online, which makes it super easy to set yourself up from the comfort of your home, whether it be online through a computer or even through their mobile app. So you shouldn't have to pay more than you have to access the same network. So use the link down in the description or scan the QR code right now on the screen to sign up for the best bang in wireless. And all my mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning fast 5G and a free mobile hotspot. And with as little as 2 lines, you're able to set up a super affordable modern family plan, which is actually what my family does right now. Everyone in this household is on Mint Mobile currently, and I myself have been switched to Mint Mobile for the last 2.5 years now, and I've had nothing but a good experience overall. I've traveled in the West, I live in the East, and I've had nothing but a good experience when it comes to coverage, speed, and data. Been able to do pretty much everything I do on my day-to-day basis without any issues. And switching to mobile was super easy as well. It took like 15 minutes to set my Pixel 7 Pro up with an eSIM. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, that's no problem. You're able to get a physical SIM card shipped out to you for free as well. So that's as simple as it gets. It takes as little as 15 minutes to pay as low as $15 a month. So if you want to get started and make the switch, use my link down below, trymintmobile.com/tacotech, or scan the QR code on the screen. It really does help out the channel when you use my links or the QR code. So if you made the switch, let me know down in the comments. Next, I want to touch on the Pixel 7 Pro's haptics. They're probably one of the nicest haptics I've ever experienced on any device. Maybe the OnePlus 11 rivals it pretty closely, but the Pixel 7 Pro's haptics are super nice. I usually keep my haptics around mid to low or high, somewhere around middle on most of my devices, but with the Pixel 7 Pro, I crank that shit up to the highest max because it feels nice. It's maybe a little aggressive, but it just feels so nice the way it vibrates in my hand. It's not even a vibration, it's so tight and clean. I don't know. I like the haptics. Maybe I'm over exaggerating them, but I think the Pixel 7 Pro haptics are pretty good. Next, Biometrics. The Pixel 7 Pro does have facial recognition as well as a built-in under-display fingerprint sensor. First, the facial recognition, it's kind of mid in my opinion. It gets the job done for convenience, but not really the most reliable in my opinion. So it's definitely not the most secure because you can only really use it to unlock your device. You can't use it to unlock your banking apps or other apps that require some actual secure biometric. I find a lot of times that when you're in a low light environment or if you have your phone pretty far away, or maybe not even far away, like at a different or weird angle, there's a high chance that it's not going to recognize you. But you do have that under display fingerprint sensor. It is an optical fingerprint sensor, and I find that it's also kind of good, but still could be better in my opinion. Maybe it's just because it's an optical one, but I do find that as long as you place your finger right on the sensor, you're gonna have little to no issues. It gets you into the device pretty quickly. So the animation itself is fast, but it's just the fact that sometimes it doesn't recognize you right away. If you tap your finger too quick, or if maybe if you have a really wet finger, it won't recognize you. And another thing too is that it's not always on just because it's an optical one. So even if you place your finger down on it when the display is turned off, unless you have the always on display on, then it's gonna work. But I don't use always on displays. So for me, I have to do a double tap and then it's able to unlock it. So, but otherwise it's a pretty okay, good fingerprint sensor, but it's definitely not the best. As far as the display, it is a 6.7 inch diagonally LTPO AMOLED 120Hz 1440p display with a peak brightness of 1500 nits, but the high brightness mode is only 1000 nits. So overall, the display quality is good. It's not the best, again, available out there, but it still gets the job done. And as far as how the display is built, it does have an almost box-to-box look to it. You do have curved edges on the sides, and then the corners are rounded out a bit, so it's not quite a box shape, but it's still pretty box-to-box looking. The bezels are pretty minimum. I would say the chin is pretty thick compared to the other bezels, but for the most part, you get a pretty big display as well. So if you're not a fan of big displays, then obviously you're not gonna like this, especially if you're not a fan of big curved displays. But as far as display quality though, I think it's overall pretty good. As far as like watching videos and just scrolling around and watching content, I think the Pixel 7 Pro gets the job done when it comes to colors and the way it looks. I think it overall looks pretty good. So I have no complaints really when it comes to video quality. You do have the ability to use either the natural mode, which is personally what I've been using lately. I've really been digging just the natural look as far as color. You do have the adaptive mode, which does increase the vibrancy of the display a little bit. So if you like a more vivid look to your display, you want to turn that option on. And by default, I think typically the Pixel 7 Pro does come in 1080p, so you might want to boost that full resolution turned on in your settings to get the maximum pixel density for your display. And as far as brightness, I definitely find myself increasing the brightness on this display all the time. So I'm usually hovering around 75 to 100% brightness all the time. It's just not the brightest out there. Now look at the Pixel 8 Pro. I see that they're offering a much higher peak brightness and a much higher, I think, height brightness mode. But yeah, this display personally is not the brightest out there. It's more than doable when you're outdoors as well. It's 1500 of peak brightness, so it's not always going to always be at that peak brightness, but still it gets the job done. If you're not really outdoors much, then you'll be fine. But if you're outdoors all the time in a sunny, bright day or environment, then this might not be the best option for you when it comes to a display on the phone. The phone's also overall really smooth. Most of the animations and the software itself is able to maintain its fluidity, but the display itself is overall built to be smooth because it is an LTPO display, 120 Hz maximum to down to 10 Hz whenever you're on a static image or display. So scrolling around, swiping around the settings, the most applications, it is overall a smooth experience, which basically leads us into performance. This does have the Google Tensor Chip G2 with 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM and then UFS 3.1 storage. 128 is the base, up to 512. I personally have the 256, and you also get no expandable storage, so no micro SD card slot on this device. Performance overall, I want to say it's around mid-tier, just barely scratching and whiffing at flagship tier, especially nowadays with the newer chipsets. It's not there yet. It's definitely good, and it can get you by with your average stuff, your average day-to-day experience, which everyone's going to have a different day-to-day experience and average usage. But for me, it's mostly just browsing YouTube, watching a lot of videos, checking social media such as Reddit and Instagram and X/Twitter, and sometimes occasionally playing a game here and there, browsing the internet. It's pretty basic usage for me. And even then, over time, sometimes I notice that the phone does tend to warm up a good amount compared to my other devices too. This phone warms up the most out of all devices I've used throughout the year. It's definitely not to the point that it's uncomfortable and super hot, but enough for it to be noticeable through the D brand grip case, which I guess you could say is pretty hot or pretty warm. But even then, I don't feel it too badly that it makes me want to stop using the device, but more just like, the phone's getting kind of warm. So if you're definitely a more extreme user, someone who maybe multitasks a lot, so using a lot of split screen, using a lot of picture-in-picture and constantly switching between a lot of apps, or if you're a big gamer, if you're into playing a lot of mobile games and high intensive graphical games, then you're gonna find yourself not really satisfied with the Google Pixel 7 Pro. It can get you by for sure, but it's not going to be the most satisfying experience. You're definitely going to come across an occasional glitch, occasional lag, hiccup here and there, and you'll find yourself a little bit annoyed, maybe is the best way to put it. But I still think that the average person will be just fine with the capabilities and performance of the Pixel 7 Pro, but not for someone who's a super heavy high-end user. Now, as far as the software, it is running Android 14, and it's been an overall decent experience. I personally don't love just the stock Google Pixel launcher experience. I find it to be quite limiting and not too many features available stock built into the actual settings app. So let's talk about some of the different sections of the software. So first, I want to mention the whole Google Material You thing, because that's, I guess, the biggest thing when it comes to the Pixel series, the Pixel launchers, and nowadays with Android as well, because a lot of other OS launchers have pretty much implemented it into their launchers. But with the Pixel launcher, I think it's the biggest thing that they want to showcase with the Pixel launcher, just because a lot of the software, a lot of the elements, the UI design stuff, it's all padded looking, stocky, stocky and thick looking, whether it be the quick settings, the notifications, the actual settings app, the calculator app, the volume rocker or the volume an animation or UI thing when you're changing the volume. It's all got a thick look to it that wants to showcase the color of what your wallpaper is when you use Material You. So that's the biggest thing, that it looks clean, but I'm not a huge fan of the thick looking padded UI elements personally. But first, let's talk about the lock screen. They added a decent amount of customization, I guess you could say, to the lock screen now with Android 14. So you now have the option of choosing between 8 different clock styles, and you have the ability to have it kind of adapt based on if you have notifications or not. So if you have notifications on, you do get this minimum looking clock style, but once those notifications go away, you're able to have it look a little more extreme, a little bit bigger. I think it's called double line if you want to look into it, but it's pretty cool. I like some of the clock styles that they have available, and you can have it adapt to the colors again to the wallpaper that you're using, or you can select any color that you want specifically. You are also now finally able to switch up the shortcuts. Now you don't have many options. It's most, I think like 8 or 9 different options, but I at least like that you can change it from just being I think it was like the Google Wallet and the Google Home stuff, and I think the camera was an option too, but there's a couple more options now, which is good, but it's still not every single app that you have downloaded, which I wish you could do. You also have the ability to use a now playing option, which basically the phone will listen in, I guess, on your environment, and if there's music playing, it'll be able to tell you what song is playing. So if you're ever at the mall or on a train or somewhere and you really want to know what song is playing around you, just whip out your phone and it'll literally tell you right away. I will note that I do like the notifications details are hidden until it recognizes your face. So that's, I guess, part with the biometrics, with the facial recognition. Once it recognizes your face, it's able to unlock and show you the details. One thing I did find with the animations on the lock screen, that unlocking of the details animation is a little too jarring. I think it's too quick. It's not smooth. It's just not clean looking. Another thing I noticed is that when you lift to wake, sometimes the animations can look a little choppy as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But one animation I do really like is that when you're unlocking your device with the power button, the screen kind of turns on from the power button and it looks really clean. If you're using the fingerprint sensor as well, it does that as well, which is pretty cool. And the phone also has an always on display. It basically just uses the clock style that you choose and keeps that kind of turned on in a white color. And that's basically it. It's a pretty simple one. There's not really much you can do with it. And once you get into the home screen, it's honestly, again, pretty simple. So you can move your apps, create folders, which, by the way, I really like the way the folders animation works. I think it's super fluid. That's one thing with the stock Android 14 launcher or Pixel launcher. A lot of the animations are pretty good. There's some, like I already mentioned, that are kind of hit or miss, but still, this photo animation I really like. I especially like that it doesn't force itself to the middle. So the folders can be set down to the bottom row of the grid, and it actually makes it pretty easy to use with one hand. But besides that, like I said, you can move your apps pretty much anywhere except for 2 different specific locations. So number one is going to be the at a glance widget that comes by default turned on. You can disable it sort of, or just like, I guess, turn it off so it doesn't become dynamic, but you still lose out on that top row. But either way, that at a glance widget, you can't remove it and you can't place apps anywhere on that top row because that at a glance widget will dynamically change depending on if you have like a calendar notification, or I think if you're traveling or something, or the weather may change based on all those different configurations. You also can't remove the quick search bar at the bottom of the grid. It's not really a big deal for me just because I use it all the time to search for stuff, and it's actually a pretty convenient spot to can just click on it and just start searching something, but you may not like it that it's there, so that's something you can't remove. The leftmost page is always the main home screen. So if you're on a different page and you swipe to go home, it takes you to the leftmost page. You can't set it so that it's the middle page or the farthest right page. It's always the furthest left page. So I never noticed that, and I guess I kind of got used to it from the iOS experience, but that's a limitation that I kind of find annoying now. And if you swipe going all the way to the left, you do have your Google Discover page, which I personally don't really use, but if you're ever bored and want to search for something to read, you could probably find something entertaining or interesting from the Google Discover page. And with Material, you do have the ability to turn on themed icons, which basically turns most applications or most apps icons to match the color of the wallpaper style, and it doesn't work for every single app. It's still in beta. It's been in beta, I think, since Android 12. I'm surprised they haven't found a way to force all apps to go into this personalized themed icon look. I'm sure you could probably find a theme pack that probably looks a lot better. And real quick, swiping all the way up does bring up the app drawer. And something I think that's new that I didn't notice before is that one, you do have the Google search bar at the very top now. So this not only searches your apps, but also just searches the internet as well. So it's just straight up a Google search bar, which is pretty cool. You also have your most used apps, or I guess recommendation apps, on the top row. And then below that is just all your apps listed in a grid or gallery or whatever you want to look at it as, for you to look for and search for your apps. There's not much you can do with the app drawer. I kind of do wish you could kind of organize it either by alphabetical or by most recently installed, or maybe potentially be able to create folders. That would be pretty cool too. Swiping down though, you get notifications, and similar to, like I said, the padding UI elements, the only thing I will complain about them is just the notification UI element padding. It's just a little too thick for my liking, but it gets the job done. I like the way that it organizes your notifications based on if it's like a timely manner notification. So I guess it kind of knows based on how the app developer develops their apps and the notification system. So messages will always show up at the very top. You also have access to your first 4 quick setting toggles at the very top, and then swipe it down the whole way unlocks or displays the rest of your quick toggles. Again, that UI element padding look is not my favorite, but it is how it is. But at the very bottom, if you have media playing, it'll show you a media player that allows you to quickly change between the songs or scrub through the song itself. You also have access to your settings just by clicking on the settings icon there. You can also access your power menu straight from the quick settings as well. And most toggles, you just turn them on and off, and then if you hold down on them, it takes you into the settings app for that particular quick setting. It doesn't work for all of them, so there's kind of, I guess, an inconsistency, but I guess it depends on the quick setting itself. So like, for example, the flashlight, if you hold down on it, it doesn't open up anything else. It would be cool if it opened up a menu where you can toggle the brightness of the actual flashlight. And same thing with the internet. It has the Wi-Fi and the mobile data grouped together. So it is kind of annoying that you have to click once and then click again to turn off the toggles and then click again to go fully into your Wi-Fi settings or mobile data settings. I have the tendency of thinking the Bluetooth button is the same way. I have a tendency of clicking on it thinking it's going to show a mini menu of all the different Bluetooth devices that are either connected currently or I can connect to right now. But it's just a quick toggle, so I ended up turning off my Bluetooth by accident all the time. I also wish that the brightness slider would have the ability to be put down to the bottom, so as soon as you swipe down once or twice, it's at the bottom, easy to reach with your hand. It's all the way at the top, so I kind of find it unergonomically comfortable to try and reach all the way up to the top. It's usually me trying to do some finger gymnastics or having to use my other hand. I also don't like that there's no auto brightness toggle, so there's no option to quickly toggle the auto brightness, because sometimes I have the habit of, like I said, increasing the brightness all the way up, and then I just want to click that quick toggle for auto brightness to quickly just set it back down to a certain brightness without me having to swipe around with it. So I kind of wish they had that option available. But looking at some other stuff, you have stuff like multitasking, which is not my favorite to do on the Pixel Launcher because you have to go into your recent apps to start multitasking or split screening. So you have to make sure that both apps or whatever apps you want to split screen are currently open. And then once you do that, you go into your recent apps, click the app icon, select split screen, and then choose another app from your already recent opened apps. You can't swipe up or swipe home and select another app from your home screen because that'll cancel out the split screen. It's kind of annoying in my opinion. So I honestly rarely use split screen, but the times I do, and I remember the split screen, I usually do YouTube at the top and then another app such as social media app at the bottom. But I do use picture in picture all the time, which basically allows you to just use YouTube specifically. That's what I use it most for, and have it in a little window that I guess kind of bounces around and moves around as you please from side to side. Or you can also increase the size of it and you have this video playing while you're also scrolling something else. It does overlap on the main app though, so if you find it annoying, you can't again just move it around, but that's something to keep in mind. As far as the ecosystem for Google, you obviously have the Google services, so Google Photos, Google Drive. You do have Google Messages installed by default, so you do have RCS messages enabled or available to use. You have Google's Find My available to use for Google devices. You also have Google's Nearby Share, which works with pretty much every Android device available. And lastly, you have the Google hardware. It's starting to grow quite a bit. Currently, there's the Google Buds, so the Pixel Buds you can use. But you also have the Pixel tablet, which I personally have never used. But you also have like the Google Home stuff available as well. And you also have the Pixel Watches now, the first gen and the second gen now. You can also use other ecosystem stuff if you wanted to, such as Samsung's ecosystem. So you can connect to a Samsung tablet just by scanning the QR code for messages. So any messages you receive on the phone will also show up on the tablet itself, as well as connect Samsung watches, which is what I've actually been doing. I've been using the Watch 5 Pro with the Pixel 7 Pro. And there's some other AI features that you may want to know about that you'll only really find on the Pixel series of devices. That being the ability to use your speech to text, and it uses Google Assistant with it, so it's actually pretty accurate for the most part, even if you're talking at a fast pace and a fast speed. You're able to use something called Live Translate, which basically allows you to kind of translate what's on your screen text-wise into your native language. So if you speak a different language other than maybe English or something, you can translate messages easily without you having to copy and paste and go into the Google Translator app. And my personal favorite are the call features. So there's a couple of them. There's one called Direct My Line, which basically takes a well-used, I guess, 1-800 number. If it has a menu system, it'll literally show you the actual menu system on the screen, and you can just physically choose that menu system instead of listening in and then selecting on your keypad or having to speak it out. It just makes it super easy for those kind of calls. And there's Hold For Me, which can probably be used together with the Direct My Call. Basically, the Google Assistant will hold the line for you And once an actual operator or a real human starts talking to you, it'll start to ring the phone or notify you that someone's trying to talk to you, so you can come back and actually pick up the phone, so you don't have to wait around, listen to that music while you wait for someone to actually get on the other line. And my personal favorite is screen calling. You have the option of setting it to maximum protection, medium protection, or basic protection. I have it set to maximum, so spam calls, unknown numbers won't be a bother to me at all, because the Google Assistant basically will answer the phone for you, screen call them, and if they want to get past Google Assistant and actually talk to you, the Google Assistant will eventually reach you and ring you to let you know that someone wants to talk to you. Otherwise, most people just hang up, which is fine by me. If you don't want to talk to me, then don't talk to me. But you can also screen call other people, so people that you may know. So if your contact calls you and you can't actually answer the phone for some reason, you can just have the Google Assistant screen call it, and you can see what they're saying in real time. And then if you have to answer or realize, oh, I should probably answer that phone now, then you can answer it directly, or just have the Google Assistant basically answer the phone for you, so you can just read it by text what they're calling you about. Now, as far as software support, you are down to 2 years of major OS updates and then 4 years of security updates. So you did lose a year of updates, but I still think it's plenty of time to enjoy and get some good life out of the Pixel 7 Pro. And typically, all Pixels tend to get the same update around the same time / same day. It does depend on your region and also on the carrier that you have. So sometimes it takes a couple of extra days or sometimes even to another week before you get the actual update. But for the most part, I've at least gotten, I feel like, at least one update per month. As far as the cameras, I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to tell you, I think the cameras for photos are really good. Videos, it could be better in my opinion. I personally don't love the way the whole shifting around, it just looks like the Pixel is trying to wait for you to move to make sure you actually moved, and then it's like, oh, okay, you did move, so let me shift over or move over as well as you pan around with the video. So not my favorite when it comes to video. For photos though, they overall looked really good. I forget the megapixels that each lens has. I think the wide has a 50 megapixel, the telephoto is a 48, and then the ultra wide's a 12 megapixel, and the front's like a 10 megapixel camera or so. So I'm just going to display a couple of samples for you guys, and you guys can decide on your own whether you like these cameras or not, and if they're worth the money that you're paying for the Pixel 7 Pro. So let me know down in the comments what you think of the cameras. Front-facing camera in 4K with mics from the Pixel 7 Pro. Taking a look here. The stabilization, quality. How we looking? Tell you what though, it's not as heavy as carrying a different phone. It's more on the lighter side. I do have a bigger case on it, so it's slightly thicker, slightly heavier, but it's not as bad as like holding like, say, this guy over here, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, or even like the S23 Ultra. These actually, the 15 Pro Max actually got a little bit lighter, so I lie. But the S23 Ultra and the older 14 Pro Max and stuff, those phones tend to be a little heavier. So this is the Pixel 7 Pro front-facing and low light situations. So right now we have the car turned on. There's some light. You can see it flashing there, but everything looks very noisy behind me. And if I walk away from the light, yeah, it immediately gets very noisy. Trip up here. Oh, there's more light, but taking a look in like kind of pitch black. Yeah, it definitely gets a bit noisy. A little bit. And this is 4K, 30 frames per second. Not as windy today, so this is the ultra wide of the Pixel 7 Pro. It's kind of cloudy today, so it's not bright as it usually is. But yeah, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. It's pretty well stabilized as well. Switch into 1X. Again, I think it's very well stabilized. Nice white line. Switching over to 5X now. Whoop. So it's using telephoto. I think it looks pretty good from what I'm seeing. It doesn't look oversaturated or too dull. It's pretty well balanced, I would say. Decent amount of detail. It's not overly detailed or super blurry, I guess you could say. Zooming into roughly 10x, I think 10x. Oh yeah, 10x is still decent. Still roughly a decent resolution. Or zoom level that you can still see a good amount of detail. See the bricks on the wall there. The door numbers on the building. But you can't really make out what it's saying on the garbage cans. Or kind of actually, but not fully. Super steady mode or action mode. We're supposed to stabilize the footage. Now we're just walking at a normal pace. It is full HD though, it's not 4K, so it is capped at 1080p. but you know, it looks very, very smooth, very well stabilized. I'm actually moving the phone up and down right now while I'm walking, and it doesn't seem to reciprocate. On the way back, we'll run, and you can't punch into 2x, but since it's 1080p, you likely wouldn't want to do this. Probably does help a little bit more with the stabilization because it's cropped in a little bit more, but it doesn't look too good. Okay, hopefully that was somewhat stabilized. You know what I would do, a cinematic mode type of style. So right now it's focused on the soccer ball, so you can see all the, I guess, fake bokeh blur surrounding it. So you can do this with pretty much any subject, looks like, because all you gotta do is just tap and focus it. So you know, it's pretty good. It looks like, at least from what I'm seeing, the ball's staying in focus. So oh, it lost focus. Oh, it's struggling a bit there, but you know, it does an okay job, I guess. So now this is in a pretty dark scenario. Right now I am using the main lens just because you don't want to really use the ultra wide or even the telephoto when you're in low light, just because they don't do too hot. Just to show you, ultra wide, it looks very noisy. At least on the screen here, it looks very noisy. And say you want to zoom in, this is the 5x lens, and again, it definitely looks hella noisy right now. If I zoom in a little further, down to like the 20x, yeah, not the greatest for low light. In fact, I think I might be using the main lens. But 1x is the best case to use when you're in a low light situation. So it looks realistic to me. It doesn't look overly bright, like fake bright. Aiming right at a light, you see all those lens flares. Oh yeah, that's some wicked lens flares right there. It's a nice sunset though. 5x zoom. People approaching. 1x again. Once again, looking at car over here. It's just the lens flares, man. Good amount of lens flares. See, it looks like when there's not enough light, it sticks to the 1x, the main, and when there's somewhat a bit of light, it'll switch to the telephoto in low light situations. So this is the telephoto here. I mean, it doesn't look that great. If anything, all I saw was really a shift in color, if anything. So yeah, you can see there the shift in the color. As far as battery life, it does have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and with my experience, I find the battery life to be kind of mid to potentially good. It's able to get me from 6 a.m. to about 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., which is more than enough for a regular work day. But if you're having a long night or an early morning and going through a lot in your day, you're probably gonna have to charge at some point during the day. So that's like 15, 14 hours of total usage. And my screen on time is around 3 to 4 hours or so screen on time. So it's not too high big numbers. So it's definitely not gonna last me into the next day. So I'll definitely have to charge overnight every day. And when you do have to charge, it's also not the greatest. It's not the fastest. I forget how many watts it can take with the USB-C through wired, but I found that it takes just under 2 hours to fully charge. If you charge for like 15 minutes, I think it gets you like 25%. And if you go for a half hour, 40 to 50%. So even if you leave it on for a little couple of minutes, it probably won't be enough to get you through the rest of your day if you have to charge midday, maybe through the end of the night if you have to charge only at night. But yeah, it's definitely not the fastest charging out there either. And you also have wireless charging, which personally I don't really use. And then you also have reverse wireless charging if you want to charge a smaller device. So at the end of the day, that's the Pixel 7 Pro after a year. Personally, if you already have the Pixel 7 Pro right now, you're definitely good for another year or two. But if you're thinking of buying a device right now, I would just get it on a sale. It's still a good device, but not worth the retail price currently of $900, if that they're even selling it for that price and even more. So definitely get it for at least $600 or so, brand new. If you're getting it used, maybe around $400 or so. But more than that, I would probably look elsewhere, but that's just my own opinion. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think, and also let me know your experience with the Pixel 7 Pro if you've had this for over a year now. I'd love to know how it's been for you. So with that being said, hopefully this was helpful. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.